In August 2005, in a district of the city of Thainan, South Korea, a tailgating incident occurred. The owner of the black car, intending to get out and take photos for evidence, was repeatedly hit by the tailgater about 10 times. Eventually, the owner died in the driver's seat. The police quickly sealed off the scene upon receiving the report. A police officer, while inspecting carefully, identified the tailgating vehicle as a white car. Speaking of the owner of this car, he was a peculiar individual within the police force, known for regularly accepting bribes from the local underworld. The chief continuously emphasized not to interfere with his affairs. However, he preferred to handle things differently, confronting a troublemaker who seemed to have 1,000 tricks up his sleeve. Others referred to him as Mr. Thien Dew. During the chief's briefing on the case details, Thien Dew placed some documents on his desk. It turned out that Thien Dew had compared this incident with all the recent cases. Through the victim's stab wounds, he speculated that this was not a sudden case but rather a masterpiece of a serial killer. In the local area, Ma Jia had sharp eyes and was deeply involved in underground business, displeasing other bosses in the surrounding underworld. Ma Jia had emerged from the zombie group that year, leaving a trail of blood. He was like a deity, exuding dominance wherever he went, a person no one dared to oppose. Seeing the remaining boss eating, Ma Jia couldn't help but exchange a few words with his subordinates. To quell unnecessary disputes, Ma Jia struck the boss in front of everyone and then returned to break the teeth of another subordinate. Such dominance made the other boss, though angry, choose to continue being submissive. After disciplining his men, Ma Jia's mood improved, but not even 2 meters into driving, he heard a loud bang. His car had been rear-ended. In the rain, the person who hit him continuously apologized, but Ma Jia waved his hand, telling him to leave as he wouldn't be compensated for this car. Just as he finished speaking, a sudden pain struck Ma Jia's back. He turned around to see a man wielding a 40 cm knife madly stabbing towards him. Despite being severely injured, Ma Jia, with bare hands, did not allow the man to gain an advantage. After a counterattack, Ma Jia seized the weapon and forcefully thrust it into the man's chest. Witnessing the formidable strength of Ma Jia, the man turned and fled into his car, stepping on the gas and ramming into Ma Jia before escaping. Upon hearing that Ma Jia was injured, the other boss could no longer tolerate it. He asserted that the opposing boss was the one behind it all and led a group of subordinates to continuously vandalize his places. However, Ma Jia, lying on the hospital bed, told him that the person who injured him was a lunatic and the other timid boss couldn't have done this. He instructed his subordinates to find a white car and record its license plate. While discussing this, Thien Dew arrived uninvited. His intuition told him that the assassin targeting Ma Jia was likely a serial killer. However, due to facial injuries, Ma Jia falsely claimed that he fell and got injured, asking Thien Dew to leave. Knowing that Ma Jia was uncooperative, Thien Dew found Ma Jia's car in the parking lot. After seeing white marks on the back of the car, he firmly stuck to his judgment that these cases were the work of one person. Interestingly, after hearing about Ma Jia's injury, the other boss, in high spirits, went to investigate. He sarcastically said, "Ma Jia, your men made a mistake this time. I'm a ruthless person. If I don't strike, there's no point. Once I strike, someone has to die." Speaking of the evildoer, the assassin, after failing to sneak attack Ma Jia, driven by his bloodthirsty and twisted psyche, first killed a dog caretaker and then went to a construction site. Hearing a taxi driver complaining about the difficulty of raising a child, the murderer's childhood trauma was triggered. He stabbed the driver several times in a frenzy. After the consecutive stabbings, the driver fell into a pool of blood. The murderer then hijacked a truck, only to discover someone sleeping inside. This unfortunate driver also became a victim under his knife. While the two fought inside the vehicle, the murderer's weapon slipped from his hand and fell onto the grass by the highway. Ma Jia's gang quickly found it within 2 days, retrieving the 40 cm knife for Ma Jia. At this point, Nu gritted his teeth and told Ma Jia that they had found the white car that hit him. Seeking revenge, Ma Jia looked for an artist to sketch the portrait of the killer, relying on memories to depict the murderer's appearance. However, finding a person in the city based on a simple drawing was like finding a needle in a haystack. Therefore, Ma Jia sought out Thien Dew, expressing his desire for the underworld and the police to collaborate in finding this killer. The two made a pact, with Ma Jia providing funds and Thien Dew applying his force. Whoever apprehended the culprit first could deal with them as they saw fit. In other words, Thien Dew wanted to bring the murderer to justice, while Ma Jia only wanted to kill him. Meanwhile, in the background, Ma Jia considered a plan to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, assigning Engu's group to carry out the assassination mission, using the murderer's weapon to place the blame on the other underworld boss. This lethal scheme resolved the enmity in Ma Jia's heart while putting the blame on the assassin. The death of the underworld boss elevated this case to a serious crime, as the weapon withdrawn from his head could be DNA tested for all the victims. This compelling evidence led to an explosive reaction within the police force. Higher-ups accused the ineffective chief, and a special investigative team was dispatched from Seoul to take over all the cases. After learning about the attack on him, the violent-tempered police officer, Thien Due, was not one to sit idly. Confronting Ma Jia for an explanation, he resorted to a few rounds of physical altercation, finally learning the essence of a powerful punch. Ma Jia remained calm, not getting angry despite the physical exertion. He told Thien Due that he was the one who killed the boss. However, the immediate priority was capturing the serial killer. Ma Jia believed that the angriest person in this situation was the murderer himself. As news of the boss's death surfaced, a man with a clean conscience rushed to the funeral, handing a paper to the deceased boss's subordinates. It stated that someone used his knife to kill their boss. This revelation deeply stirred the loyalty of the boss's subordinates, who then headed to Ma Jia's warehouse. While Ma Jia and Thien Due were inspecting the white car for fingerprints, they were confronted by the approaching group. Unfortunately, the subordinates underestimated Ma Jia's combat prowess, be it against a normal group or even a zombie horde. This group of rotten eggs was no match for him. After a series of violent clashes, everything returned to silence. The subordinate who chose to confront Thien Due was fatally shot in the chest. Ma Jia, taking the blow for Thien Due, witnessed the man's demise. The subordinate exhaled his last breath in the mortal realm. Thien Due returned to the police department and was assigned a new mission by the chief, a kidnapping case. In his heart, Thien Due always contemplated the serial murder case, unwilling to handle any other messy cases. But orders were orders, and Thien Due took on the investigation. Inadvertently, he noticed a man trailing him. However, the reputation of the Korean police being foolish led to a daring chase, ultimately losing sight of the target. Luckily, Thien Due overheard from a street food vendor about a suspicious person drinking. Following the foul stench, the police searched in a garbage dump and found a fingerprint. Unbelievably, forensic analysis verified that the fingerprint on the wine bottle matched the one on the white car, and personal information was obtained. After finding the fingerprint, Thien Due followed the trail and discovered a house in a gloomy basement. In the greenish light, he finally saw the true face of the murderer. Witnessing clear evidence, Ma Jia gave the order. Over 100 underworld subordinates quickly followed the command, sequentially tracing the footsteps of the killer. However, when the mafia and the police collaborated to apprehend the criminal, a tragedy unfolded before them. On another rainy day, as Ma Jia was waiting for his car, he saw a high school girl running towards him, completely drenched. He immediately transformed into a gentle uncle, offering her shelter. Later, the girl thanked him and bid farewell, boarding a bus. While Ma Jia was having a meal in a restaurant, he saw the same girl on the news, now a lifeless body. The image angered everyone, prompting Ma Jia to explosively declare that he would find the monster responsible, even if he had to dig 3 feet of soil. The underworld gang, fueled with determination, quickly located the killer's traces in a guest house on North Street. However, the murderer, having soaked in fresh blood for years, possessed high evasion skills and managed to escape. He rammed his car into Ma Jia's, madly fleeing on the main road. This pursuit exacted a heavy toll. During the chase, Nu couldn't avoid the frenzied slashes of the killer's knife. He breathed his last in Ma Jia's arms. With a new grudge and old hatred, Ma Jia erupted. Following Engu's principles, he found an old, dilapidated karaoke bar. Observing a trembling young girl, he knew that the demonic figure was hiding behind the door, ready for action. Using only one move, the door flew open like a sheet of paper. The scene of Ma Jia overpowering the murderer was brutal, with blood and flesh flying around, but it was oddly satisfying for the viewers. Yet, the frustrating part was that although the killer was caught, the evidence was insufficient. Fingerprints and blood-stained knives were considered indirect evidence, insufficient to charge the murderer with the deaths. Facing Thien Due with no specific plan, the murderer said, "Hee hee, what can you do to me? Come here and fight me." In a time when the law could not adequately punish the evildoer, Ma Jia accepted Thien Due's suggestion. By confessing, he secured a plea bargain, becoming the sole witness in the serial murder case. Finally, the killer was sentenced to death. However, the only condition for the plea bargain was to confine Ma Jia and the murderer in the same prison cell, shocking the murderer. Now, Ma Jia looked at the distant murderer, revealing a sinister smile. The movie concludes here. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a like, subscribe, and share. Now, goodbye, and see you again.